Welcome. How is everyone today? All right. Well, hey, I'm actually originally from Michigan. I'm happy to be back here. Haven't been in a few years, but hello, Grand Rapids. All right. So today we're going to be talking about red team social engineering, with the focus being on what can be done over the telephone and tactics that you can use to increase your social engineering skills. But before I jump in, I like to start with a little story. So social engineering and penetration testing, they're just the greatest job. If you can be bored doing penetration testing, there is something wrong with you. So we get asked to do this test against a multinational law firm, and I had called up, and my only goal is to get them to run a tiny piece of malware. My only goal. So I call up and I say, hey, I'm a partner with this law firm. I keep trying to run this application, and it won't work. Now, this is in fall of 2014, I remember, because this was just after the MS 1468 vulnerability was released. Anyone remember that one? Oh, it was a brutal one, the Kerberos vulnerability. And so it gives you an easy way to get domain admin. Well, we have this guy in our group. He always gets domain admin. His name is actually James, but we just called him the sniper because he could beat anybody to it. And so I get on the phone and I tell the help desk that I can't run this program because I knew they had application whitelisting based on our GrrCON. And lo and behold, he says, just use my credentials. And he gives me his password, which is even worse because it was password 1. But in his defense, he made the A an @ symbol. Much more secure. So he gives us this, and guess what? He was a domain admin. And so that's how you get domain admin over the phone. I don't imagine it would work like that every single time. But I truly love this job. It really is great. And I think you'll tell I have a passion for it as we go on. So quick privacy notice. I am sharing actual audio from a social engineering call. I've edited the audio in his voice so that it is harder to distinguish who it is, but I really don't want this to end up on YouTube. So do me a favor, if you see that logo on the bottom of a slide, don't do any audio or visual recording. Pictures are fine at any time. In fact, please give me love on Twitter, but please don't record any audio when we get there. A little bit more business as we're jumping in. I see a lot of people make the mistake of blaming the person who fell for it. The reality is in 99% of social engineering attacks, it is not the fault of the person who was tricked into doing things. It's more the fault of management for not providing enough training around this and enough awareness to make sure that this person knows that these attacks might happen. And even then, what are we doing? We're exploiting basic human weaknesses or vulnerabilities that exist within everybody, and so it can be very difficult to detect these types of attacks. Now, if you want to hear the blue team, come check out my talk tomorrow at 3 o'clock in the other track 2. So I've ripped out all the blue team elements of this today because that's what I'm covering tomorrow. But if you are interested in the defensive side, please come check that out. Real quickly, for those of you who don't know, I am Joshua Crumbaugh. I am the chief hacker and CEO of a company called PeopleSec. We focus on the human side of cybersecurity. Enough about me, let's jump in. So, our pretext for this particular call that you're about to listen to, I had identified by looking at this company's MX records that they were using an obscure, and for those of you who don't know, MX records are just the email records that tell a server where to send email to. So I looked that up, and we find out they're using a very obscure ISP, or Internet Service Provider, to handle their email. We start researching this provider, and we find forums devoted to complaining about how horrible this email service is. So I think, wow, this might be a good pretext that we could use against this company. And so I call up and I say, hey, listen, I am with Quality Assurance, a new department. We've been losing a lot of business lately because we've had issues with our email. And they hired me to proactively find these problems and deal with them. And so I tell him that we have set up a new server, we've migrated everything, and all I need him to do is update a few settings, and I'll just give you an executable to do that, basically is where we're at. There's way too many calls to show all of it, so I wanted you to sort of get the backstory and knowing where we're at and how we got to where we're getting started at. So, couple of quick things. Set obtainable goals when you're doing social engineering, but be highly opportunistic, and you'll sort of walk through that as we go. So, for red teaming, the most important thing, or one of the most important things you can do, is build rapport. It's just like sales or any other relationship building. If you can build rapport, if you can develop this relationship, you're going to have better luck. So I like to call it creating an us against the world scenario. An example of this is if I call you and I say, hey, I wanted you to do X, Y, and Z, all of a sudden I pinned you against me. Whereas if I call up and I say, hey, my boss asked me if we could do this, and now I'm working with you to help solve the problem, we are on the same team versus putting ourselves on opposite ends of on opposite sides of the table. Does that make sense? Okay. So create this us against the world scenario and build camaraderie. Couple things you can do, and listen, you'll hear it happen. You can make mistakes on purpose. In fact, if you're trying to draw things out and waste somebody's time, which this is where you're going to see why in a bit, making mistakes can be a great way to help build rapport. Plus, humans make mistakes. If everything goes off perfect, you might actually set off a red flag. And create that sense of camaraderie. Work together to solve problems, even if you created the problem or the problem doesn't even exist. As long as they believe it does, it may as well. So here's the first little clip.
That way we can test it. No, just on yours.
Okay.
Or at least for now. I don't. There shouldn't be any issues with the other ones. So right now I'm just trying to troubleshoot and make sure that yours is set up correctly. It's that same IP address. I just threw the file out there. But I can give it to you again if you need.
Bear with me 1 second.
But I got to give you the name of the file that will go at the end of the IP address.
Oh, okay. You got a pen that works this time, since I can find the damn thing. Alright, go ahead.
Alright, it is
Okay.
/
Okay.
all lowercase, email _ config.exe. So that's / email _ config.exe.
The web page cannot be found.
Not shady at all. Every day people use executables to update email settings, right? So, but people don't understand technology. We'll talk about that in a second. So one of the next biggest things that you can possibly do to increase the likelihood of success or of a successful social engineering engagement is have great recon. When we found that they had a bad ISP that had known issues with their email, this became pure gold. If I can find the person who gets called every single time the email goes out, do you think that's a thorn in their side? Yeah. And so now I can come in, offer a solution to this problem that haunts him, if you will, and in doing so, what happens is I actually blind him. So one thing I like to say is never underestimate human blindness when it comes to selfish desire or personal selfish interest. People can become blind to any security risks. You red teamers out there, I'll bet you've seen it before. You thought, man, there's no way this possibly should have happened, yet it did. And so this is a great way. If you get the right information, the right data, anyone will become blind. And that doesn't mean offer them a Ferrari. I mean, of course, we all might want one, but that's going to fall in the too good to be true sort of scenario. It has to be something realistic and generally something that solves a problem for them. And if you can find that, you've just found the magic, magic sort of formula that'll get you anything you want. So this is actually one of my favorite parts here. Yeah, you'll hear.
The web page cannot be found. Let me try it again. /
email _ config.exe. Let me double check my. Let me check the server. Oh, I was wrong. It's capital E on email and capital C on config.
Okay. That'll make a difference.
It definitely does. It's a tiny little program. It shouldn't take but a second to download.
Since it's done, antivirus software's kicking in since it says it's an unknown publisher.
So, at this point, does anyone think it should have been game over? Well, I don't give up very easily, but you can, when you're doing social engineering, there's a lot of things that you can plan on. And so if I know I'm going to ask you to run malware, is there a chance the antivirus goes off? So this is what you call communications modeling. Know the potential pitfalls or issues that you're going to run into ahead of time, and in doing so, you can have a pre-canned response ready for, well, if the antivirus triggers. But even then, it's not always super easy. And so just prepare for as much as you possibly can, because this is one of the areas I see a lot of social engineers mess up, is that they're on the phone, this happens, or something like this, and all of a sudden they give up. Well, I guess I'm caught. Excuse me. I guess I'm caught. And you're not caught. So until you actually are in cuffs, you're not caught. And we're going to talk about a story where that almost happened one time. So even with good planning, though, it can be challenging.
Antivirus software's kicking in since it says it's an unknown publisher.
Oh, it is an unknown publisher. My boss just pulled it, or put together the file, and the way those things work is with signed DLLs. Does it give you an option to ignore it?
No, give me just a second. Let me try this again. If I can get that.
What antivirus software do you have? I might be able to find some stuff.
It's run through. So, yeah, the only action it gives me is delete.
Oh, okay.
Says don't run this program and delete. That's the only two actions it gives me.
So I can't tell them to ignore it and run it anyway. But, sometimes it can be challenging. And that brings me to the next rule. Never break character. It is impossible to get caught over the phone. And in fact, if you do get caught on the phone, you can call right back using a different accent or a different voice or a voice modulator. You could be a completely different sex, and you can use a different pretext and call back as many times as you want, going after different targets. So never break character. Has anyone ever heard of an inmate in prison that's guilty? Yeah, I mean, they're already convicted and imprisoned, and they still haven't broke character. So it's our job to emulate the bad guys. So we want to do the best job possible, and in part of that is making sure that we never break character. So that leads me to what I like to call the denial of thinking attack. And this is a little bit of an interesting and fun story about how I actually discovered the denial of thinking attack. So that same law firm, actually, that I told you the story about at the beginning, well, right day one, within minutes of starting the assessment, we had domain admin. So what do we do? Instead of making all the phone calls and setting up appointments, we have access to all their systems. So we put it on people's calendars, we hack their schedule, we make sure that when I will show up, they're expecting us, or in this case, me. And so I walk in, and the receptionist says, yep, we're expecting you, and gives me the key and access and a badge and everything to get into their data center. Well, I walk into their data center, and I happen to miss this very neat sort of security tool. And it was a pinhole camera on the ceiling. And it took a picture of me when I walked in. And I'll tell you, not a very flattering one. Apparently, I'm balding a little bit on the top. And I look shady in that picture, too. And it emails it to all of IT. Pretty effective to keep people that aren't supposed to be there out of your data center. So what happens? This guy shows up. He says, who are you, and why are you in my data center? And I said, well, we're having horrible latency with the Paris office. You know, it typically averages around 34 milliseconds. We're up around 95 milliseconds. Can you believe it? And I just keep going off about latency. It's pure gold in social engineering. I don't know why people are so intimidated by it, but you can get anyone to shut up and let you do whatever on latency just about any day of the week. So I tell him about latency. He leaves. Gives me about 5 minutes. And during this whole time, I'm logged on to their domain controller as a domain admin. And so he leaves and he comes back. This time he comes back with 5 other guys. And they're all really big guys, so I could tell why he picked them, and I knew immediately I'm about to be bounced. So I come out, they say, well, you're going to have to come with us, and I say, okay, and we walk out in the hallway, and I notice that all the hallways are lined with people on both sides. Like, oh, wow, I'm going to have to use my letter of authorization, also known as my get-out-of-jail-free card. Well, I'd never done that, and I didn't want to start right then, so I get to thinking. I was like, well, they're all lined up to see a show. Let's give them a show. So I conjure up my best Jersey Shore sort of dramatic scene, and I start talking about how it's my anniversary, I'm going to be late, I'm going to have to work late, my wife might leave me, she might take the kids, you know. I just make this huge scene. And I mean, I'm even throwing in a few choice cuss words in there to make sure it looks legit and real. And what happens is, no sooner do I duck out, then they look at each other and they say, we just discovered a breach and we didn't detain him. And furthermore, we didn't call the authorities. Because these were the lawyers that when major companies had a breach, they called up this law firm. They said, what do we do? And this law firm would help coordinate things like, I don't know, involving law enforcement. And so they did not even realize that they weren't following their own policy until after I was out. I like to call it denial of thinking attack. If you can prevent somebody from thinking just long enough to get what you want, you may be able to walk out and get whatever you happen to be after. So I don't want to run out of time, though, so the next sort of rule here is that sometimes you may need to do multiple phone calls. You don't have to accomplish anything you're going after in a single call. In fact, if you're going after a much larger goal, it can be highly effective to use multiple phone calls and work on building that rapport over time. Also, sometimes you just need to regroup. So here it is.
Don't run this program and delete. That's the only 2 actions it gives me.
Yeah, man, with all these viruses these days, it's blocks stuff that, you know, we used to do this type of stuff all the time, and it's getting more and more difficult to, you know, unless I'm going to go buy a $100 certificate and attach it to the file just so that it, you know,
can be identified.
No, I understand what you're saying.
Okay then. I might have to call you back in just a little bit here. I'm sorry for bugging you so much. I'm sure you're busy today.
No, it's okay. Just give me a call back and let me know what's going on.
Will do.
All right.
All right. Bye.
Thanks, Sean. Bye.
Never be afraid to take a couple moments, regroup, call them back. I mean, if you built rapport by this point, they should be answering your phone call anyway because you're helping them solve a problem. The next rule is what I call the my boss rule. Everyone's had a bad boss, so you can blame literally almost anything on your boss, and people will not only be more likely to do the crazy stuff you're asking them to do, but on top of that, they'll feel bad for you because you have an overbearing boss. So I call it the my boss rule, and basically what it means is blame everything on somebody else. Instead of, I want you to run this PowerShell script, my boss wants you to run this PowerShell script. The difference is I am not the person asking you to do it now, which means if you get suspicious, it's not aimed at me, it's aimed at my boss. It's the buffer, if you will. So here's an example of the my boss rule in action.
Thanks for holding.
Hey, this is John again. I'm sorry for bugging you, but so my boss asked me if we could just run a PowerShell script instead.
So my boss asked me if we could run a PowerShell script. I'm going to keep mentioning it, and you'll see as we go, you're going to hear I never directly ask him to do anything. And this is something you should use in all of your social engineering. very rarely is there a case where you don't want to add in some sort of buffer, where you want to be the person asking them to do something. It's sort of the same as not going negative. I see a lot of people in social engineering, the first thing they do is they go negative. And the problem with going negative is that it tends to turn people off. You're not as likely to get what you want. What's that old analogy? You catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. Same is true in social engineering. So try to keep things as positive as possible and blame everything on somebody else. So here we are in the next clip.
My boss asked me if we could just run a PowerShell script instead. It's just like the command prompt is just a little bit more robust and is built into Windows. And that one we shouldn't have any issues with whatsoever. Is now a good time?
Might well.
Okay.
Anytime better than the present.
So at this point, I have decided I don't just want to get malware on their computer. In fact, we have a back door. My team is actively, spreading throughout their network and moving around at this moment. But I don't want anything to work because I've realized I think I can take this a little bit further than just getting a back door. In fact, at this point, I'm thinking, why don't I set up an appointment to come in on Monday? The easiest way to talk your way into a building, set up an appointment first. That way, when you show up, they're expecting you, and it makes it very easy to get in and get whatever you want. I'm trying to draw things out, and I'm trying to use time to my advantage now because it's a Friday, and around 5 o'clock, I found that people become very motivated to do whatever you want on a Friday afternoon if you drag things out to like 5:15. Yeah. So the time is a very effective weapon. So I want to drag things out, and that's exactly what I'm doing at this point. The next little tip here is use sound effects to your advantage. But also be aware of the sound effects that might cause you issues. If I call and I say I'm in an office and you hear a dog barking in the background, gonna be a red flag, right? You might immediately say, "Oop, this guy's lying." Sound effects can just as easily help you though as they can harm you. And so what I've done is I've taken a quick 4-second clip here and enhanced it so you can hear all the sound effects in the background. You'll notice I might not have found the most up-to-date sound effects for office noise, though. People still use dot matrix printers, right? So use sound effects to your advantage. They can really help sell your story. In fact, now that you've heard them, you're going to start noticing all these outdated sound effects throughout the rest of the call. Next thing is boldness. In social engineering, it's not too uncommon that you're going to be pretending to be an expert in a field that you have no clue about. So there may be times where you have to make things up completely. Now, when you do that, sometimes social engineers will get tempted to be timid, and it'll be obvious that they're nervous and they don't know what they're talking about because they start talking like this. No, what you need to do is be bold in your responses. I don't care if it's 100% made up and completely inaccurate. It doesn't matter. That you're going to get a better reception from your target with a bold response that's completely inaccurate than a timid response that's 100% accurate. So be bold in any of your responses. And remember, this is social engineering. The truth is not really that important. So you can make up anything. We create our own world. All right, so the next one, I guess the little tip here is sort of listen to confessions or misunderstandings, confessions of misunderstandings of technology. And we'll hear one here.
And just tell me whenever you have a web browser pulled up, and we'll just download it through the web browser.
It's open.
Okay, so once again, same IP address. That is,
I wrote it down.
and then /, all lowercase, email setup.ps1.
Email
And that's just one word, email setup.
Email setup dot
PS1.
PS1. Okay.
Just go to save page as. And I recommend saving it to your C drive, like right to the root of it, just simply because you have to run it from the command line. And
Save the what drive?
Do you think he knows much about technology? Quick side note about this guy. He was their vice president in charge of all things technology. Yeah, and what's worse is and I've not made this mistake again, and I've made sure to put practices in place, but he was our trusted agent. So he knew that on Friday, somebody's going to be calling up trying to get somebody to do stupid things. And he knew that on Monday, somebody's going to show up in person and try and get people to do stupid things. The only part I don't understand is at what point did he think, well, no one else has showed up, and the only person that showed up, I let in. So I say don't blame the target, but sometimes they're a little bit more at fault than others. All right, so read between the lines and listen for these misunderstandings of technology. What's that mean? That means I can say anything. The beauty of being a penetration tester or an ethical hacker is that we're all very technical. So on an average day, we could talk over, let's say, the IT director's head about anything technology. But when it's somebody that truly doesn't understand technology, oh, you can use that to your advantage. You can make up anything. It can be legit, it can be fake, but you can talk about things and they won't ever question you. It can also be effective if in the right circumstances to talk over somebody's head for a very short period of time in order to get them to sort of yes you. So an example is I was tasked, the entire engagement was nothing more than see if you can talk your way in to this Fortune 500 data center. And they gave me 2 weeks to do this, which is long for a social engineering engagement. And during this time, I've studied them. I've been trying to figure out where the best approach is, where are my exits, if I do get caught, how do I duck out real quickly, who's the best target, and I finally figure out who I'm going to target. And there's one of these people in every company, and in this case, it was a little old lady. She was the friendly one that knew everybody. She was right next to the door, so she was often helping people find the right people when they would walk in, specifically vendors and things like that. And so I targeted her. Why? Because I knew everybody in the organization trusted her, and it was her job to get me to the right person. So what she does is she takes me and introduces me to the IT director because I tell her, hey, we're having, I think I use latency again. I use that a lot. But I tell her about the issues, and she says, I'm going to have to put you in touch with the IT director. He'll be able to get you your badge. Well, what happens is she introduces me. Because she introduced me, now it's sort of an abuse of a trust relationship. Just like hacking computers, hacking people, you can abuse trust relationships just as effectively. So he's already starting to trust me a little bit more because she introduces me. So the first thing I do before he has a chance to ask me for my credentials is I talk over his head. His gut response, because he doesn't want to see or sound or feel stupid, is to just say, here's your badge, go, data center's over there. And so he gives me the badge. And then I spend the next 4 hours sitting in the data center, unaccompanied, no one watching me, plugged directly into their network. That should not happen. So that's how you can sort of use or abuse trust relationships in order to get better results, and how you can use that talking over somebody's head very rarely for a very short period of time in order to help get what you want. But enough about that. Let's jump back in and listen to a little more audio here.
Save the what drive?
So in Windows, you have your C drive or your standard drive. Just because you have to run it from the command line, it's a lot easier if it's at a place that's easy to get to.
Okay. Gotcha.
So, but you can save it wherever. We just have to find it and navigate to it in the PowerShell.
Notice I told him to save page as. What's going to happen is it's going to put HTML headers in there, which will make it not work. Again, I don't want things to work for him.
All right, and then whenever you get done with that, just type in PowerShell into the Windows command prompt. I don't mean command prompt, into the start menu. and once it pulls up the shell, let me know.
What should it be said? The word, what should the name of it be?
Oh, just email setup.ps1.
PowerShell, that's what you're thinking.
No, PowerShell is a program built into every Windows machine. This is just simply a script to run from within it that will take care of the problem, or, well, just test it.
There's a scanner.
PowerShell.
Okay, and you can save the file as just email setup.ps1 or whatever.
That's what I did.
Okay, cool.
Okay, now it's in the prompt screen.
Cool.
That's the prompt.
Did you save it in the... okay. Okay, so now you can just type in email setup.ps1 and it should run.
All right. So another quick tip here is when you're on the phone, there's often going to be a lot of silence, a lot of sort of dead space, if you will. I've edited out most of it and sort of sped through those parts just for the sake of the presentation. But during those parts, make sure to provide constant feedback. Now, this is edited down, so it'll seem like a little bit more constant feedback than what I would recommend, but provide constant feedback to them to let them know you're there, you're working on whatever problem, and you're trying to help them get it fixed. And the next thing is be equally apologetic and thankful for their time. Other things you can do are sort of remind them of your goals as you're going on. Your goal is just your pretext, whatever that happens to be. In this case, you're going to hear me sort of going through and providing them that feedback, and then on top of that, reminding them of my goals and fixing their email problems. So here we go.
Okay, so it is not recognized as the name of the big table. Well, alright, let me go into this and see if I can find this.
Do you want me to do it real quickly? I mean, we have screen sharing that we could use if you want.
That's right there. It did say this is an HTML document.
Ah, okay. Well then, let me just do something really quickly on the server. Just give me just half a second. Almost done here. I'm sorry about this. It's taking a little bit longer than I thought. Alright, let me just verify that the file worked. Okay, cool. So instead of going directly to the script in there, why don't you go to /email.html.
Okay, let me try that. So, on the command screen, or...
in the web browser.
Okay,
So it's back in the web browser. I'm sorry, man.
Alright. So, type in that.
Yeah, so now it's not a problem. I'm sorry I've been bugging you so much today. We were supposed to test all this and do it all behind the scenes and then come to you once we were ready, but things don't always go as planned.
All right. So a couple other things. You can use volume and the tone of your voice to emphasize different points and make it more believable. Other than that, it can be effective to talk to yourself. If you do have those silent parts where you're doing work on the server, you might want to just open a blank notepad and start typing in. It can be ASDAF, ASDF. Remember, sound effects can help sell. I've had quite a few where I'm just typing random stuff in, just so that they hear the typing in the background. Another thing here is that, well, anyone who has kids in this room knows the secret to kids getting what they want is that they won't shut up until they get what they want. They ask again and again and again. So if I ask somebody for something and they say no, well, I'm going to ask again and again and again. So be a little bit like a kid in terms of getting what you want in social engineering. So ask frequently, ask often, and be persistent. Another thing is that you can mention personal faults as an excuse to get what you want. Ironically, the personal fault I'm about to mention is true. So here is the that next. Oh, well, wait, real quickly. Remember the my boss rule. It's so important. I gave it 2 slides. Blame everybody on, or everything on somebody else. It's one of the best tactics you can use. So here we are, and I'm going to propose we go to join.me.
Wow.
Did you call me back?
Before we do that, could I see what it's doing real quickly? If I could I get you to go to join.me and then just click start meeting and give me the number? That way I could see your screen and I could see what's going on with it, because it should run.
Gotta download the app.
So making it difficult on him up to this point is just to make it so he's more likely to give me control of his computer. Why do I want it? Because it's getting hard to make up excuses as to why we keep having to run more apps and stuff like that. And so if I'm just working on his computer, it's going to draw out more time and get us past the 5 o'clock hour.
Fun.
What's that?
I said, I was just saying fun, like semi-sarcastically. But hey, it's Friday.
Yeah.
And then once you do get there, it'll give you a 9-digit code up in the top center of your screen. And I can simply type that in to see what's going on.
208 824 827.
208-824-827.
And no, that code won't
Okay,
work.
and let's go back to the PowerShell.
Right behind the browser.
Yeah, I don't actually have control of your screen unless you give it to me, so I can just see it.
There you go.
He didn't give
Okay.
me control just yet.
I see it there. Object not found. Can you type in dir? Okay, so wherever it saved it to, it did not save it to there. We've got the original one that saved it as a HTML file. If I'm hating bugging you so much. Do you want me to tell you what to do, or do you just want me to do it real quickly?
It doesn't matter to me either way. As long as we can get this done.
Okay. It would be easier if I could just take control. I'm not always the best at giving instructions, and I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
All right. So at this point, I now have control of his computer. He's about to give it to me in the next little clip. And so here is the next clip where I start setting up for getting that appointment Monday, which is the reason I've drugged this out so long. You know you're doing something right when it actually starts getting a little bit boring because you've drug it on so long. But that's a sign you're doing something right, and that's when the crazy stuff happens, and you'll hear about that in just a second.
Thanks for holding.
Hey, how are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
Good. I'm sorry about everything today. Good news is I think we have a solution finally.
Okay.
And with any luck, it'll work, and maybe we can test out the new email system over the weekend. I really hope so. That's been my goal. So, the easiest way to do this might be to use join.me again like we did last time, but again, that's completely up to you. Or I can walk you through it.
Going there now.
All right.
He learned how to use join.me pretty well.
If nothing else, I'm actually available on Monday. I could just come by in person if we don't get this working today.
Yeah, if it doesn't work, that's fine. Here's your 9-digit number.
All right, what is it?
614 230 372.
think that's it. It doesn't show me how long the audio clips are. So, a couple other things. It can help when you're doing these social engineering calls to laugh frequently and laugh often. And if your target makes a joke, that is the most hysterical joke you have ever heard in your life. So these things can help. Now, who wants to hear the conclusion, the final audio, and then hear what happened next? All right. So here is the final bit of audio we have, and then we get into the fun part.
All right. It looks like we're all set. Just due to how late it is, I don't think, even if everything turns out to be good, that we're going to be able to do the migration today. I'll talk to my boss and get back with you. If not, then maybe Monday I'll just come by and, modify any settings that need to be modified, and then we'll be all set and ready to go.
Sounds like a plan. I'll see you Monday then.
I will see you Monday.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so Monday rolls around, and we do a little bit of the, near site stuff like checking wireless, but around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I walk in, and I ask for this guy. We'll call him, I don't know, Joe. So we'll call him Joe. I ask him for him, and he comes downstairs. And he immediately says, thank you so much. We're very happy to get our email fixed. I've told everybody you're coming today, which was very nice of him. And so he starts taking me around the bank. He's introducing me to literally everyone, including the bank president. And he says things like, hey, when he gets here, make sure you're logged into your computer and then get up and take a break. So he makes my job really easy. The only problem is my pretext now has me going around to literally every single computer in this bank. And it gets tedious. Couple hours into this, I'm starting to think, man, I need to come up with an excuse to get out of here before I have to go do the rest of these computers. I feel like I'm back in IT. There's a reason I got out of IT. So I tell you, be opportunistic. Well, at one point, I am standing there, and or actually sitting on a computer, and I'm installing my malware. And typically we wouldn't put malware on every single system. The client gets what the client wants, right? So I look across the hallway, and I notice the bank vault's open. Now, quick side note, this is a Monday afternoon in a fairly small town, and I don't know if somebody was retiring or what, but almost every single person in the bank has gone upstairs for cake. I think it was somebody's birthday, but it could have been something else. But they're all upstairs celebrating whatever this event is, and there are 2 tellers left downstairs, and they are nowhere near me. So I'm looking at this money across the hall, and I'm thinking, I should really go in there. My nerves are getting up a little bit at this point because it's not the normal thing that people do walking into bank vaults. So what do? Well, I saw the money, and no one's watching me, so I walk across the hallway, and I go into the bank vault. I fondle their money a little bit, and I take a selfie holding a stack of money, and I go back to fixing every computer in their network. Now, the beauty of high security areas, they don't tend to have good surveillance once you get past all the perimeter surveillance. So they didn't even find out about the bank vault until they got their report. So, if anyone has ever been tempted to rob a bank with a gun, that's the dumbest thing in the world. Just fix their email. Now, the next day, we go to the internal section of the penetration test. And I walk in, only this time not as I walk in this time as Joshua. And the president of the bank comes out. Well, before we get to the president of the bank, the VP that we were talking to, you should have seen his face when he saw me. Turns white as a ghost. He knew he was in some trouble. And I think he knew he was even in more trouble when the president of the bank walks out and he looks at me and he says, "You bastard." And with that, that's the end of my talk. Thank you. Thank you. So I made sure we had plenty of time for questions. There is my contact information if anyone wants to get in touch with me. Also, feel free to just come up to me and ask for a card. But do we have any questions? Really? No questions? We made a suggestion that they move to a cloud service such as Office 365 or Gmail. I don't know if they ever got their email fixed, though. I actually felt a little bad about it. Any other questions? Really? Well, you can tell my wife's back there. She knows this story. All right. Well, I saved time for questions. We have plenty of time if anyone wants. Otherwise, yes. No, but I assume it'll happen one of these days. I've had really good luck. So I have had some instances where, like, I set off alarms and had to go hide in a bathroom for a couple hours. But no, generally the recon's been fairly spot on. Yes. So how much time do I take? The question was, how much time do I take to do these types of things? It depends on the goal. With this one, I didn't plan on taking more than 5 to 10 minutes. I just started realizing that I could take this much further, and so at that point, I started dragging it out. But this particular series of calls was about 3 hours worth of total phone time. Yes. Yeah, it could have been. I was trying to make it really difficult on him and have nothing work to where he'd get frustrated, and by the time I asked him to share his screen, he would definitely give it to me. I like to time things perfectly because it increases the probability of success. So, anyone else? Yes. Well, testing's always a good one. When these sorts of things happen, everybody finds out about it. The word spreads quickly. And so employees will be more motivated. But tomorrow, my entire talk is about how to better ward off these types of attacks and the methodologies that I've found to be successful in doing that. Yes? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. That certainly can help. I was once got into a Nevada, or no, it might have been I think it was Louisiana actually, a data center for a major casino. And there's actually a law in Louisiana that says that if somebody comes into the data center, they must be escorted or accompanied at all times, and they must sign in. I was able, and at a fine of something like a $20,000 fine if they don't follow this practice, and yet I was able to get in there unsupervised, take selfies, and do it all without signing in. So yes, those things help, but only if the people actually follow the policy. And that's where testing comes in to catch your employees when they're not following the rules and they're not following policy. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. It was really a pleasure.